The rain stung Malik's face as he stood outside the gala. The kind of New York downpour that made you feel like the city itself was crying. He clutched the invitation, its gold-embossed edges now soggy, and stared at the man who'd just shattered his world. 3 minutes ago, Julian had called him a charming accessory to his elite friends, not knowing Malik was close enough to hear. Malik's heart pounded. Each beat a hammer against the fragile hope he'd built over months. He'd thought Julian loved him, thought the late-night talks, the stolen kisses in Julian's penthouse, meant something real. But now, standing in the shadow of the glittering venue, he saw the truth. He was a prop, a token to flaunt in Julian's high society game. It had started 6 months ago in Brooklyn, at a dimly lit jazz club where Malik, a 27-year-old graphic designer, was sketching patrons in his notebook. His warm brown skin glowed under the stage lights, his curls falling messily over his forehead as he captured the saxophonist's soulful sway. Julian, 29, with his tailored suit and piercing blue eyes, had approached him, offering a whiskey and a smile that felt like sunlight after a long winter. "You see people's souls in those sketches," Julian had said, his voice smooth as the jazz notes. Malik, usually guarded, felt his defenses melt. Their first date was a whirlwind dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Hudson, Julian's hand brushing Malik's as they laughed over shared stories. Julian, a rising star in Manhattan's finance world, seemed different from the polished elite Malik had always avoided. He spoke of his dreams to break free from his family's expectations, to be more than a name on a trust fund. Malik, raised in a modest Jersey City apartment, saw in Julian a chance to bridge two worlds. Weeks turned into months, each moment deepening Malik's belief that this was love. Julian invited him to exclusive events, art openings, charity balls where Malik, in borrowed suits, felt out of place but anchored by Julian's hand on his back. "You're my muse," Julian would whisper, and Malik believed it. He ignored the whispers from Julian's friends, the side eyes that lingered too long on his skin, his clothes, his everything. But tonight, at the gala, the illusion cracked. Malik had slipped out for air, needing a break from the suffocating wealth around him, when he overheard Julian's voice through an open window. "Malik's perfect for the optics," Julian had said, laughing with his friends. "Diverse, artistic, checks all the boxes for progressive cred. He's my ticket to the inner circle." The words sliced through Malik, sharper than the rain now soaking his jacket. He stepped forward, confronting Julian as he emerged from the venue. "Is that all I am to you?" Malik's voice trembled, but his eyes burned with defiance. Julian froze, his face a mask of guilt and calculation. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "I thought you loved me," Malik said, his voice breaking. Julian's gaze darted away, and in that moment, Malik knew he'd been a fool. But he wasn't done. He'd spent too long hiding who he was, his queerness, his blackness, his heart, to let this betrayal define him. Malik turned, walking into the rain, each step a vow to reclaim himself. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stay in Julian's world. The city pulsed around him, alive with possibility and pain, and he felt a spark of something new, anger. Yes, but also resolve. Back in his small Brooklyn apartment, Malik sat at his desk, his sketches scattered like fragments of his heart. He picked up a pencil, his hand shaking, and began to draw. Not Julian, not the gala, but himself, raw, unfiltered, a man who'd loved and lost but wasn't broken. The lines flowed, bold and unapologetic, as if his soul was spilling onto the page. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he thought of his mother, who'd raised him alone, teaching him to stand tall despite the world's judgments. He thought of the queer community he'd found in Brooklyn, the friends who'd held him up when he felt small. And he thought of Julian, the man he'd loved, who'd seen him as a trophy, not a partner. By morning, Malik had a plan. He'd expose Julian's world not with scandal, but with art. His sketches would tell his story, their story, in a way that no elite circle could ignore. He'd turn his pain into power, his heartbreak into something beautiful. But first, he needed to face Julian again, to demand answers and closure. Malik's phone buzzed, Julian's name flashing on the screen. He hesitated, then answered. "We need to talk," Julian said, his voice tight. Malik agreed. But this time, he'd set the terms. They'd meet on his turf, in Brooklyn, where the truth couldn't hide behind champagne and chandeliers. As he hung up, Malik felt the weight of his decision. This wasn't just about love Anna Maria, it was about who he was, who he'd let himself become. The rain had stopped, and the city glowed with a fragile dawn. Malik stepped outside, ready to fight for his truth. Malik chose a small coffee shop in Bed-Stuy for the meeting, a place where the walls were covered in local art and the air smelled of roasted beans and honesty. He sat in a corner booth, his sketchbook open, pencil moving furiously as he tried to steady his nerves. Julian walked in, his usual polish dulled by the casual setting, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Malik. "You look like you belong here," Julian said, attempting a smile as he slid into the booth. Malik didn't return it. The memory of Julian's words at the gala charming accessory burned too brightly. He set his pencil down, meeting Julian's gaze with a steadiness he hadn't felt before. "I heard you," Malik said, his voice low but firm. "At the gala. I heard what you really think of me." Julian's face paled, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the table. For the first time, the man who always had an answer was speechless. "It's not what you think," Julian finally said, but the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. My family, my career, they expect perfection. You are important to me, Malik, but I have to play the game." Malik's chest tightened, a mix of anger and sorrow. "Play the game? I'm not a pawn. Julian, I'm not here to make you look good for your rich friends." He pushed his sketchbook forward, open to a drawing of himself standing alone in the rain, his face a storm of emotion. "This is who I am, not your diversity checkbox." Julian stared at the sketch, his expression unreadable. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, but Malik shook his head. Intentions didn't erase the wound. He needed more than apology. He needed to know why Julian had let him believe in a love that wasn't real. They talked for hours, the coffee shop emptying around them. Julian admitted to the pressure from his family, old money New Yorkers who saw his queerness as a liability unless it served their image. He'd brought Malik into his world to prove he was progressive, to secure a seat at the table of Manhattan's elite. But he swore his feelings had grown real, that he'd fallen for Malik despite the game. Malik wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at his heart. "If you loved me," he said, "you wouldn't have let them talk about me like I was your pet project." Julian flinched, and Malik saw the truth in his silence. Love might have been there, but it was tangled in ambition and cowardice. Leaving the coffee shop, Malik felt lighter but not healed. He walked through Brooklyn, the streets alive with music and laughter, and found himself at a community center where his friend Aisha ran an art workshop for queer youth. Aisha, a 30-year-old black trans woman with a laugh that could lift spirits, saw the storm in Malik's eyes and pulled him into a hug. "Spill it," she said, handing him a paintbrush. As they worked on a mural with the kids, Malik told her everything. Aisha listened, her hand steady as she painted vibrant swirls. Then said, "You're more than his story. Malik, write your own." Her words stuck with him. That night, Malik began planning an art exhibit, one that would tell his truth and expose the shallow world Julian belonged to. He'd call it Trophy, a raw, unfiltered look at love, identity, and betrayal. He spent hours sketching, each stroke a step toward reclaiming his voice. But Julian wasn't done. A text arrived late that night. "I'm sorry. Let me make this right." Malik stared at the screen, torn between hope and distrust. He agreed to meet again, this time at a neutral Spoda park in Harlem where they'd once watched the sunset. He needed to know if Julian's remorse was real or just another move in his game. The park was quiet when Malik arrived, the autumn leaves crunching under his feet. Julian was already there, sitting on a bench, his usual confidence replaced by something vulnerable. "I messed up," he said as Malik approached. "I let my world define you, and I hate myself for it." Malik sat, keeping distance between them. "Then why didn't you stop it?" he asked. Julian's answer would decide everything, whether there was a chance to salvage what they'd had, or if Malik needed to walk away for good. Julian's hands gripped the bench, his knuckles white. "I didn't stop it because I was scared," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of losing my place, my future. My family's approval comes with a price. Malik, I thought I could have you and still win their game." Malik's jaw tightened. "And I was the price you paid." The words hung heavy in the crisp Harlem air, the sunset painting the sky in hues of fire and loss. He wanted to scream, to shake Julian until the truth poured out unfiltered. But he stayed still, waiting. Julian looked at him, his blue eyes raw with something Malik hadn't seen before: shame. "I didn't see it that way at first," he said. "I thought I could keep you separate, protect what we had. But I was wrong. I used you, and I don't know how to fix it." The confession hit Malik like a punch, but it also lit a spark of clarity. He saw Julian not as the untouchable prince of Manhattan, but as a man trapped by his own choices. Still, understanding didn't erase the betrayal. "You don't get to fix me," Malik said. "I'm not broken. I need you to be honest, not just sorry." Julian nodded, his gaze dropping to the ground. "I'm trying. I want to be better for you. For myself." He reached for Malik's hand, but Malik pulled back, not ready to bridge that gap. The park grew quieter, the weight of their words settling like the dusk. Malik left the park with more questions than answers. He spent the next few days throwing himself into his art, sketching scenes of their love and its unraveling. Each drawing was a piece of his heart, a way to process the pain and reclaim his story. Aisha helped him secure a small gallery space in Brooklyn for the trophy exhibit, and word began to spread in the local art scene. But Julian's world wasn't done with him. At a queer community event, Malik ran into Claire, a sharp-tongued socialite from Julian's circle. She cornered him, her smile dripping with condescension. "You're making waves, darling," she said. "But don't think you can drag Julian down with you. He's out of your league." Malik's blood boiled, but he kept his cool. "I'm not dragging anyone," he said. "I'm telling my truth. If that scares you, maybe you're the one out of your league." Claire's smile faltered, and Malik walked away, his resolve hardening. The encounter pushed Malik to dig deeper into his exhibit. He began reaching out to other artists in the queer community, inviting them to contribute pieces that explored identity and authenticity. The project grew, becoming a collective cry against being reduced to tokens or trophies. Aisha's mural from the workshop became the centerpiece, its vibrant colors a testament to resilience. Julian texted again, asking to see Malik's work. Against his better judgment, Malik invited him to the studio. When Julian arrived, he stood silently before the sketches, his face a mix of awe and guilt. "This is you," he said softly. "The real you. I never deserved this." Malik didn't respond. He didn't need Julian's validation anymore. But as Julian left, promising to support the exhibit anonymously, Malik felt a flicker of hope, not for them, but for Julian's potential to change. The exhibit was set to open in 2 weeks, and Malik knew it would shake the foundations of Julian's elite world. Back at his apartment, Malik sat with his sketchbook, drawing a new piece, 2 hands reaching for each other, one pulling away. It was his story, their story, and he was ready to share it with the world. The gallery buzzed with anticipation as the opening night of Trophy approached. Malik spent every waking hour preparing, hanging sketches, and coordinating with other artists. The space, a converted warehouse in Bushwick, felt alive with the energy of their collective truth. Aisha's mural dominated one wall, its bold lines and colors a beacon of defiance and hope. Malik's centerpiece was a series of sketches titled Unseen, each one capturing a moment of his journey with Julian: the first kiss, the gala betrayal, the park confrontation. He'd poured his soul into every line, and the vulnerability terrified him. What if the world saw him as weak? What if Julian's elite friends dismissed it as melodrama? Aisha caught him staring at his work, doubt clouding his face. "You're not just telling your story," she said, her voice firm. "You're giving voice to everyone who's been used, erased, or underestimated. This is bigger than you, Malik." Her words steadied him. The night before the opening, Malik walked through the gallery alone, the silence amplifying his thoughts. He thought of his mother, who'd called to say she was proud, even if she didn't fully understand his art. He thought of the kids at the community center, who'd started sketching their own stories after seeing his work. This exhibit wasn't just about Julian, it was about claiming space in a world that tried to shrink him. The opening night arrived, and the gallery filled with a diverse crowd: local artists, queer activists, curious Brooklynites. Malik wore a simple black blazer, his curls tamed but his eyes alight with purpose. He spotted Julian in the corner, his presence unexpected but not unwelcome. Julian kept his distance, his face unreadable as he studied the sketches. The crowd's reactions were electric. Some gasped at the raw emotion in Malik's work. Others whispered about the elite world it exposed. A young queer artist approached Malik, tears in their eyes, saying, "This is my story too." Malik's chest swelled with pride, and pain had done it. He'd turned his heartbreak into something that mattered. But the night wasn't without tension. Claire and a few of Julian's friends arrived, their polished presence jarring against the gallery's raw energy. Claire's eyes narrowed as she scanned the Unseen series, her lips curling into a smirk. "Bold," she said to Malik, her tone icy. "But you're playing with fire, darling." Malik met her gaze. "Good. Let it burn." The crowd around them murmured, sensing the confrontation. Claire walked away, but Malik knew this wasn't the end. Julian's world didn't take kindly to being exposed. After the event, Julian approached Malik outside the gallery. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you until I saw it here." Malik wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing. "What now?" he asked. Julian hesitated. "I'm leaving my family's firm," he said. "I can't keep living their lie. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to be someone you could respect." Malik nodded, unsure what to feel. Julian's words were a start, but actions would speak louder. As the crowd thinned, Malik stood alone in the gallery, his sketches glowing under the soft lights. He felt lighter, as if he'd shed a weight he hadn't known he carried. The fight wasn't over, But he'd claimed his voice and no one could take that away. The success of Trophy rippled through Brooklyn and beyond. Local blogs covered the exhibit, praising its raw honesty and calling Malik a voice for the marginalized. Invitations poured in galleries, podcasts, even a university panel on queer art. Malik was overwhelmed but grounded by Aisha and his community, who reminded him to stay true to himself. But Julian's world didn't stay silent. A week after the opening, Malik received an email from an anonymous sender, warning him to back off or face consequences. The vague threat chilled him, but he refused to let fear win. He showed the email to Aisha, who insisted on hiring security for the gallery's remaining nights. Malik's days were a blur of interviews and sketching, his nights spent wrestling with memories of Julian. He couldn't shake the image of Julian at the exhibit. His eyes filled with regret. Was it real? Or just another performance? Malik needed answers. But he also needed to protect his heart. He agreed to meet Julian at a quiet diner in the East Village, a neutral space where neither of them held power. Julian looked different, less polished, his hair slightly unkempt, his eyes tired but clear. "I've been thinking about what you said," Julian began. "About being honest. I'm trying to untangle myself from my family's world. But it's messy." Malik listened as Julian explained his decision to leave the firm, to start over in a way that felt authentic. He'd been meeting with a therapist, confronting his privilege and the ways he'd hurt Malik. "I don't expect you to take me back," Julian said, "but I need you to know I'm trying to be better." Malik's heart wavered, but he held firm. "I'm proud of you for trying," he said, "but I need to focus on me now. On my art. My community." Julian nodded, accepting the boundary, and they parted with a tentative understanding, no promises, no expectations. Back at the gallery, Malik threw himself into the final week of Trophy. He added new sketches, including one of Aisha leading the youth workshop, her strength a beacon for him. The exhibit had become a movement, with other artists sharing their stories of being tokenized or erased. Malik felt like he was part of something bigger, something that could change lives. But the threats didn't stop. A brick was thrown through the gallery's window, shattering glass and Malik's sense of safety. A note attached read, "Stay in your lane." Malik's hands shook as he called the police, but he refused to cancel the exhibit. Aisha rallied the community, and volunteers showed up to clean the glass and stand guard. The incident only fueled Malik's resolve. He organized a public talk at the gallery, inviting queer artists and activists to discuss their experiences. The event drew a crowd, including some of Julian's former circle, who seemed rattled by the exhibit's impact. Malik spoke last, his voice steady as he shared his journey from love to betrayal to empowerment. As the crowd applauded, Malik saw Julian in the back, clapping quietly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Malik felt a spark of the connection they'd once had. But he turned away, focusing on the community that had lifted him up. He wasn't Julian's trophy anymore, was his own hero. The gallery talk marked a turning point. Malik's name was now synonymous with courage in the queer art scene, and Trophy was extended for another month due to demand. But the threats escalated a slashed tire on Malik's bike. More anonymous emails. He began to wonder if Julian's elite circle was behind it, or if it was someone closer, someone he hadn't suspected. Aisha convinced Malik to stay with her for safety, and her apartment became a sanctuary of laughter and late-night talks. One evening, as they painted together, Aisha said, "You're shaking their world, Malik. That's why they're scared. Keep going." Her words were a lifeline, reminding him why he'd started this. Malik decided to confront the threats head-on. He worked with a local journalist to investigate, sharing the emails and the note from the brick. The journalist, a queer woman named Lena, dug into Julian's circle, uncovering a network of influence that protected its own at all costs. She warned Malik to be careful, but promised to expose the truth. Meanwhile, Julian reached out again, offering to help. "I know people in that world," he said over coffee. "I can find out who's doing this." Malik was torn. Julian's sincerity felt real, but trust was a steep climb. He agreed to let Julian investigate, but only if he stayed transparent. Days later, Julian called with a lead, Claire. She'd been vocal about Trophy threatening her social standing, and her family had ties to powerful figures who could orchestrate intimidation. Malik's stomach churned. Claire's smug face at the exhibit flashed in his mind. Her words of venom he hadn't forgotten. With Lena's help, Malik gathered evidence screenshots, witness statements from gallery staff who'd seen Claire lingering near the broken window. They took it to the police, who opened an investigation. Malik felt a mix of relief and dread. Exposing Claire could end the threats, but it might also pull him deeper into Julian's world. The night before the police questioned Claire, Julian showed up at Aisha's apartment, his face pale. "She's not just angry," he said. "She's desperate. Her family's reputation is tied to mine, and your exhibit is unraveling their control." Malik saw fear in Julian's eyes, but also determination. "I'm done protecting them," Julian said. "I'll testify if it comes to that." Malik didn't know what to say. Julian's willingness to break from his world was a step, but it didn't erase the past. Still, Malik felt a shift, a possibility that Julian was fighting for something real, not just redemption. The next day, the police questioned Claire, who denied everything but crumbled under pressure. She admitted to the emails, claiming they were just a warning. The brick, she insisted, wasn't her. The investigation continued, but the threat stopped, and Malik felt a fragile sense of safety. With the exhibit nearing its close, Malik began planning his next project, a series on queer resilience. Inspired by his community, he invited Julian to see the new sketches, not as a partner, but as someone who might understand. Julian came, and for the first time, they talked without the weight of their past. It wasn't love, but it was a start. The final week of Trophy was bittersweet. The gallery was packed every night, and Malik's sketches had sparked conversations across the city. But the weight of the threats lingered, even as the police closed in on Claire's associates. Malik felt like he was balancing on a tightrope. One wrong step could pull him back into fear. He threw himself into his new project, sketching portraits of Aisha, the kids from the workshop, and others who'd shaped him. Each face told a story of survival, and Malik found healing in their strength. He also began mentoring a young queer artist, Jay, whose raw talent reminded him of himself at 18. Julian stayed in touch, updating Malik on the investigation. Claire's family had hired lawyers, but evidence was mounting. Phone records, a witness who'd seen her driver near the gallery the night of the brick. Julian's testimony was key, and he delivered it without hesitation, severing ties with his old world. Malik respected the choice, even if he wasn't ready to let Julian back into his heart. One night, Malik and Aisha hosted a closing party for Trophy. The gallery glowed with fairy lights, and music filled the air. Jay performed a spoken-word piece about being non-binary in a world that demanded boxes, and the crowd roared with support. Malik looked around, his heart full. Had built something that outlasted his pain. Julian arrived late, his presence quieter than before. He pulled Malik aside, handing him a letter. "Read it later," he said. "It's everything I couldn't say." Malik nodded, tucking the letter into his pocket. They stood together, watching the crowd, and for a moment, it felt like they were just two people, not a story of betrayal. The letter, when Malik read it later, was raw and unpolished. Julian wrote about his shame, his fear of losing Malik, and his commitment to change. "I loved you," he wrote, "but I didn't know how to love you right. I'm learning, and I hope you find someone who deserves you." Malik cried as he read it, not for what they'd lost, but for the honesty it held. The investigation wrapped up with Claire's family settling out of court, agreeing to fund a queer youth art program as restitution. Malik saw it as a victory, not just for him, but for everyone his exhibit had touched. He donated part of trophy's proceeds to Aisha's workshop, ensuring its future. As the gallery closed, Malik stood among his sketches, now headed to a permanent collection at a local museum. He felt whole, not because of Julian, but because he'd chosen himself. His art, his community, his truth, they were his foundation now. Months after Trophy closed, Malik's life had transformed. His new project, Resilience, was gaining traction, with galleries across the country requesting showings. He'd moved into a bigger studio, mentored Jay and other young artists, and found a rhythm that felt like home. The threats were a memory, faded by the strength of his community. Julian had kept his distance, respecting Malik's space. He'd started a nonprofit to support queer artists, using his privilege to open doors he'd once guarded. Malik heard about it through Aisha, who'd partnered with Julian on a youth program. "He's not the same man," Aisha said, and Malik believed her. But he wasn't ready to reconnect. One spring evening, Malik walked through Central Park, his sketchbook under his arm. The air was warm, the city alive with possibility. He sat on a bench, sketching a group of queer teens laughing nearby, their joy a reminder of why he kept going. His phone buzzed a message from Julian. Simple and direct. "I saw Resilience. It's beautiful. Thank you for showing me what's possible." Malik smiled, not replying, but feeling a quiet peace. He didn't need Julian's approval, but the acknowledgement felt like closure. He'd loved Julian, and that love had broken him open, but it had also led him here to a life where he was enough. As the sun set, Malik thought of his mother, who'd framed one of his trophy sketches in her Jersey City apartment. He thought of Aisha, Jay, and the kids who'd become his family. He thought of himself, a black queer man who'd turned pain into art, betrayal into purpose. He opened his sketchbook, drawing a final piece, a man standing tall, his face lit by a city that could break you but also make you whole. The title came easily enough. It was his story, his truth, and it was more than any elite circle could contain. Malik closed the book, stood, and walked into the city he called home. The future was his, and he was ready to live it unapologetically, authentically, and free.